Hello, everybody, and welcome to Is This the Norm? I'm Laura.
I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Heather. This will be a two-part episode talking about the history of nursing and some other aspects that I'm hoping that Laura and Rebecca will bring up to have me talk about, because sometimes I forget nursing is so second nature for me because that was my first profession. I started when I was 21, and then I let my license go in 2023 because of my new profession. I did, which I haven't told you, Laura or Rebecca, I just renewed my license yesterday because I wanted to possibly do some other entrepreneurship type activities. My husband was not too thrilled, but I'll ease into it as time passes. Anyhow, amazingly enough, kind of in my mind, I always thought nursing only kind of started, maybe in the Middle Ages, or, what we were told about a lot during nursing school was Florence Nightingale. She was a big revolutionary nurse forward type thinker where she came up with sanitary ways of taking care of patients, which was a huge problem before she founded new hygiene methods. So anyways, ancient and early Christian era was when nursing actually came about. It was kind of more intertwined with religion. And that period is between 2000 BC and 500 AD. So that was something new for me that I was like, wow, it goes way back. Funny thing is that nursing was actually a man's job in that era of the ancient times up to 500 AD. So, like I said, nursing was intertwined with religion, spirituality, and household duties. So, I mean, I think that throughout time, nursing has been this holistic approach to care of people when they're sick, that it's not just because of their medical condition. I used to always joke around with my patients that I'm a really great nurse, but I'm a terrible waitress because I always wanted to bring them like sandwiches and drinks and new water. It's not like I intentionally forgot, but I have a busy brain. And so, priorities take the call light goes off, somebody needs help going to the bathroom. And so I forget to get that person their snack, but they were always really understanding. I had really sweet patients. I just had a really good experience as a nurse. It was busy. It was scary. It was stressful. The worst thing about nursing, and sorry, I'll get back to the history, is administration. So that's a whole nother story in itself. So, sometimes just to be a nurse is really hard because you got everybody else in their ivory towers. Anyhow, so nursing in this time was done by men. Early care focused on hygiene and comfort. Whatever that looked like was probably based on herbal methods. It is often provided by monks or nuns or male caregivers in the Roman Empire. The earliest record of nursing is during the Roman Empire. So, as always, we've seen this kind of pattern in our podcast episodes where the Roman Empire is always coming about as the progressive, or the Greek Empire, same thing, very progressive ways in humanity. So, these male caregivers were known as nosocomi. So this refers to managers or attendants of a hospital in some legal or historical context. So that's what nosocomy means. And so I could look this up because I'm familiar with the word nosocomial infection. And what that means is an infection that you get at the hospital, that you didn't come into the hospital. So a big thing when the early 2000s that we were really working on in nursing was nosocomial infections, which usually was through catheters for urine. So a lot of times what happens is you have a catheter and you have to drain it. And one of the things that they noticed, I don't remember my hospital ever doing this, but there was hospitals apparently somewhere because it was a big issue, is where people were going around draining not IV catheters, urine catheters, and they were using the same container for everybody's catheter. So the bugs were able to crawl up somehow through the bag into the tube and give people urine infections and sometimes really bad kidney infections. So there was a big push in the early 2000s about not making sure patients are getting another infection on top of what they're already dealing with. So nosocomial kind of makes sense because if you have managers or attendants or people in the hospital, that's who's giving you that infection. So I thought that was an interesting connection that I never really knew the roots of that word. Anyways, these caregivers that were male provided care for wounded soldiers, laying the foundation for hygiene practices. Healing during this era was deeply intertwined with, like I said, spiritual and ritual type healing. And I'll get into some stuff that I'm sure you guys may have heard of as humors. So that came a little bit later on, but that was another aspect of healing. Around the same time, in India, the world's first documented nursing school, primarily for men, was established. So that was around 400 AD. That was news to me. I thought that was pretty amazing. Again, you'll kind of see this common theme where India and Roman Empire were way ahead of everybody else during this time. So the nursing roles became gendered, where women cared for female patients, this school for nursing, and while men oversaw general care and hospital operations. So in India, they did have kind of this male versus female, and the females were caring for female patients. And I'm assuming the males maybe cared for males or the females cared for everybody. It didn't really distinguish there. Other evidence of organized nursing can be found in the Charaka Samhita, a foundational Ayurvedic text written around 100 BC, which described the role of the, and excuse my pronunciation, I think it's upasthata, translates as attendant or nurse. This role was responsible for preparing formulations and providing direct patient care, duties similar to those of today's nurses. And then when Christianity came about in Roman Empire, the caregiving became an expression of religious duty. And around the 5th century AD, Saint Fabiola founded the first hospitals offering care for sick and poor, and this was grounded in Christian tradition. So, who was Saint Fabiola? She was a physician and a Roman matron of rank for the company of noble Roman women who were under the guidance and influence of Church Father Jerome. So, what these women would do, who was led by Saint Fabiola, they gave up all earthly pleasures and devoted themselves to the practice of Christian asceticism. Hopefully, I said that right, which means severe self discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. So they were just completely dedicated to their charitable work, which I had never heard of that. Laura, have you ever heard of Saint Fabiola?
Yeah, St. Jerome sounds familiar.
He was
And
kind of the leader of it,
yeah,
and I just kind of wanted to
but I
highlight
don't
her because
know a lot of details or anything. They just are familiar names to me.
yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight her because it's Women's History Month, and I know that he was a big influence, and when I was doing the research, his name kept popping up, but I really wanted to see what she was all about, but she was actually kind of the lead person in, making sure all the women that were under her that, that she led them in the right direction, which I thought was really cool. So, some of the basic facts of ancient nursing during this time was that the history of nursing timeline for this era reveals nursing as an early form of caregiving, which was deeply rooted in ancient healing practices. And in ancient Egypt, texts like the Edwin Smith papyrus, which was around 1600 BC, has documentation of surgical practices and treatments often carried out by temple priests and priestesses. So I think that, a lot of us know, possibly by watching documentaries about an ancient Egypt, they would drill into the heads of people. And oftentimes this was done for like migraines or because they probably had mental illness. So they were trying to get whatever was in their head out. So some of the stuff was kind of barbaric, but a lot of it was progressive with herbal treatments and really understanding people's issues and trying to help them. And again, with ancient Egypt, it wasn't just men, it was priestesses and priests. And then in
I
ancient,
had the opportunity, I think I was in Texas at the time, to go to a museum that had skulls of those people who had the holes in their skulls for, and when I was there, it was talking about they were trying to get demons out,
right.
which mental illness is what it was, but they were big holes, like you could put a golf ball through it.
Mhm.
It was gnarly.
Yeah. But do you remember anything else like outside of get the demons out? Was there any other known documentation?
I'm not not that I remember, like, that's all that I remember from it. This was several years ago, like a decade ago, that I was at this museum, and yeah, so I don't remember any other details of what I read, but I remember seeing those skulls and thinking, how did they live through that? Like, obviously, some of them didn't, but to be alive while they were doing that, crazy.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of them, I don't remember the percentage, I don't remember seeing that, but yeah, a lot of them did live, which is crazy that they were able to live through, but I mean, I don't know if I always wondered, like, what the documentation of if they lived did it actually help or not, and I didn't really see that anywhere.
I mean, if I lived through that kind of torment, I'm not sure that I would think anything else in life was worse than that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Yeah, I'd maybe say, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go. I feel much better." At least
Yeah,
don't drill
I'm
any more
happy.
in
It's
my
all
head.
good. Yeah, you rescued me.
Oh, yeah. So I remember seeing pictures of that too, was the really big holes, but golf ball size. I don't remember that. That's huge. Holy moly.
Maybe those were the ones that didn't survive. I'm not sure, but the
Maybe.
schools that I was looking at had huge holes in them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they like, "Oh,
Crazy.
he's
So
still
sad.
screaming. Keep
Yeah.
drilling."
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. Ugh. And then in ancient Mesopotamia, the earliest hospital-like institutions were established and caregiving roles were assigned within them, which I thought was crazy. I was like, wow, they actually had hospital type roles. So again, I think it kind of goes back to these dark ages where we humans seemed pretty progressive, BC and then a little bit after. And then all of a sudden we get to the Middle Ages and we're going to get into that. And yes, religion was a big thing during this time, and that's kind of what led having care to people were these monasteries during the Middle Ages. But I just feel like there's this backwards issue that we had for a while. And again, a common theme in these episodes as we go through history of things. So, Middle Ages, so 500 to 1300 AD, talked about that it was really religious during this time. So these monasteries were not only a spiritual place, but they were all also physical sanctuaries where nuns and monks took on carrying roles. And so, I didn't go deep into this historic aspect because I'm going to just use my head because I read these books where I can fall it. They're big, huge, 1,000-page books. Jed got me into the first one, and that's where our daughter's name came from, was the Pillars of the Earth. So these are historical fictions, but the history, of course, in them are real, and he does his research and he does a very good job. So in these books, there's these monasteries where care is being given, and what it looks like is these monks, they're the ones that get the schooling and have like what type of treatments, and then the nuns just kind of have to follow them and do what they tell them, which I thought was in one of the books that I read was the second one in the series for Ken Follett. And one of the nuns in there, she's very outspoken, but they are getting, I think it's plague time. So she's caring for these patients that are coming into the monastery and they're dying. And she kind of, there's like a Florence Nightingale type situation where she figures out like we need to put masks on and we need to try to wash our hands best we can, and the monks are fighting her the whole time. I don't know if that ever really happened, but I thought that was really interesting because you read these books and they're like, "Oh, my asthma, the air is bad." And you're like, "No, it isn't, you idiots." But, back then that's what it was, is that these monks typically told the nuns what to do with the treatments and healing, and they couldn't question them. Their training did was rooted in studies that were in ancient Greek and Rome and Arabic medical texts focusing on herbalism and the four humors. Now, have you guys heard of the four humors and what those are? Anybody? Nobody? Okay.
I don't know what they
No.
are. I was just
Yeah,
waiting for
so
Rebecca to say something.
I know there's like silence. I'm like, okay, I'm not putting you guys on the spot. So yeah, I kind of I mean, I've heard of these four humors and I never really got into them because, well, I know that that's not what like modern medicine is based on, but if you kind of think about it, it kind of makes sense of why they came up with these four humors. So the four humors are blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Now, if you look at these four humors, if you look them up, they're like, earth, wind, fire, water type situation. And then you have these balances of hot and cold, moist and hot. And I don't have them all memorized, but that's what they're based on. In remember when I did the foot binding episode, it in that book it talks about these humors and how they balance them based on your symptoms. So I'm thinking, oh, these are like fluids in your system, but no, it's really more of the blood, yes, kind of, because then they use bloodletting, but they're more speaking almost in a spiritual way because people that are having phlegm issues or their phlegm is imbalanced, they'll be more calm or they're sluggish or unemotional. And then if you have an imbalance with your yellow bile, it's usually you're quick-tempered and irritable if that's not balanced with anything else. And then the black bile, if that's not balanced, you're more prone to depression. So that was one of the ones that was a theme for the book I read, Lady Tan's Circle of Women, is that she had a black bile issue because she kept getting kind of postpartum depression and very depressed at times. So to be healthy, it required a perfect balance of these humors. And so it was more of a holistic approach. And, I don't know how accurate it was as far as what to use as far as herbs. Obviously, at some point we stopped using it, but I know that there is still modern practice of balancing these humors with ancient, Chinese medicine and what have you. So the monks gained their expertise through in-house library research, and they served in infirmaries, and they blended spiritual prayer with natural remedies. So they also did herbal treatments, bloodletting, which we know did not work. That was like they usually did that to try to balance the blood humor, so that's why you'd have bloodletting, and then a lot of
So
the
so
salves.
can
Go
I
ahead.
interject really quick
Oh
on the
yeah, please.
bloodletting? I was I don't know, I was watching some video or something about microplastics and how, like, we all have microplastics in our bodies and in our blood, and nothing supports there's no research on it that supports this, that this actually occurs, but they had brought up, like, you know, if you donate blood and because you can't once the microplastics are in your body, they're there forever, like, your body doesn't excrete them, and so they were like, "Well, maybe if you donate blood, then you're taking some of those plastics out with the whole blood that's leaving your body, and then you're producing more blood, so that could maybe possibly lower the microplastics in your blood." And I was like, "Holy cow, bloodletting has come full circle." Just a
Yeah,
little
that's a
side
good
note I
point.
thought was kinda funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
another
this
side note, thanks DuPont for that, for the forever plastics and in our water supply. Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
yeah, we are not supporters of DuPont. That's our political stance for today. When you poison the water of everybody, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you just donate your forever plastics to somebody else. That's a good
I know,
idea.
right? But it's plasma, right? So, like, is it, like, in the plasma part of your blood? You know what I mean? Like, I guess we don't know that. We'd have to look it
Yeah,
up.
I don't know. And when you donate blood, you donate whole blood too, not just plasma. You can donate plasma, but you also donate whole blood.
Right, but most of the time when you go and they pay you, they're paying you for plasma, because
Yeah, yeah, if you're getting paid, you're donating plasma, but
right.
to volunteer, it's whole blood, that's what I was
Oh,
referring
I
to,
didn't
yeah.
realize that. Hmm.
Mhm.
That's messed up, though. "Here you go. Here's my blood with some forever plastics in it."
Well, honestly, they think that these microplastics really don't affect you as much as
Mm.
people sometimes make it out to be, and if you're
There's
dying
there's
and you
certain
need
people
blood,
that
you're probably
have
gonna take it.
well, yeah,
Everyone has
exactly.
microplastics anyways.
It's yeah. I mean, if you're gonna die because you need blood, I don't think you're gonna care. But I also don't think that it's just something we can ignore. I think it's a bunch of crap.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. I assume that as generations go on, the microplastics are probably gonna be accumulative, like your whole
Yep,
life you're exposed to high amounts,
they
then
are.
the
It's already
threshold
happening in our
eventually is gonna
children.
be met. Yeah,
Yep,
that's my assumption.
absolutely.
There's
Yep.
no research backing that, that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, we still don't know what causes cancer, for heaven's sakes. We don't know everything that causes cancer, let's put it that way. Or everything causes cancer,
Yeah,
according to
that's what
the
I've come to.
yeah.
We're probably constantly fighting cancer and we just don't know it. And, sometimes it gets us if our body can't get rid of it,
Yeah, right. That's
unfortunately.
that's what I suspect too. It's just a matter of like, I think stress is a huge player too, or just predisposition to it.
Hmm. Yeah, we're our own worst enemy. That's what I've come to the conclusion. And sorry, got off track there, but I think it's great. Like these little, I don't want to sit here and blah, blah, blah. I mean, history lessons can sometimes be boring. So, yeah, talking about this blood. But by the way, with blood, when you donate whole blood, what they do is they condense it. I guess that's the best way I could, because you get packed red blood cells. So that's what we give to patients. I don't know if I maybe have given whole blood one time, and I don't even remember why I gave the whole blood, but it's super rare that you're going to give whole blood. They just take out all the extra stuff, and maybe they use the other extractions for something else. I have no idea because I've never been in the process of, or been privy to the process of what they do with blood after they take it
Yeah,
from
I
people.
I
But
currently donate through a company called Vitalent, and I always just give whole blood because when they try to give me back the stuff they're not gonna use, I always infiltrate, and
mm,
so I just give them a pint of whole blood. So you
What does
can
what
do
does
both ways.
infiltrate mean?
What?
What does infiltrate mean?
Oh, like, my veins suck, and so they'll try to go in my vein, but they actually poke all the way through it, which creates a
Oh,
hole, and it doesn't close up in the 15 minutes, and so when they give me my what is it, Heather, platelets or whatever back, they go outside of my vein and go into my skin, which causes
yeah.
lots of bruising.
Yep. Gotcha.
It sucks. It's
yeah,
scary
they should
looking
just do
too.
2 IVs on you then, one to extract and one to give you back so that
That's what I
you don't
told them. I
infiltrate.
was like, "Poke me somewhere else." But I
Yeah.
don't have, like it's pretty much just my right arm is my only good arm too, so even if they tried on the left side, I don't think it'd be successful there, it'd be even worse.
Mm. No,
Yeah.
they're not very good pokers. That's probably
Yeah,
your problem.
I know. Like everyone, hospital, it's a thing. I always know to give my right arm because 'cause I've been infiltrated.
Mhm.
Because 'cause I've given plasma in college, I give blood now when I draw blood at the doctors, I just yeah, but I try. I give whole blood, that's something.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's good enough. I mean, if they're just doing it as a courtesy for, like, hydration reasons, and here they're like, "Well, we don't need this necessarily, so we'll just give it back to you instead of wasting it." I would assume that's what they're trying to do, which makes sense. So it just depends on the person. So, yeah, an infiltrate is just like a fancy way of it getting clogged up, or the vein, yeah, it's going into your interstitial area, which is like your flesh,
Yeah, it's
so it's
not
not
going
going in your
back
vein.
into the bloodstream through your vein,
Mhm.
it's infiltrating the areas outside of the vein.
Yeah, and it can be caused by all kinds of infiltrations, can be clogged by, like, a little clot that happens. So another thing is if you have really good clotting factors, that could cause the issue too. I mean, there's so many variables, but anyways. Yeah, well, good job on giving blood. Thank you, Laura. All right.
Yes, you're
So
welcome, world.
you're welcome, world. By talent,
A
they are very
and
good.
I'm also
They
giving my plastics because I do eat microwave popcorn, and apparently that's, like, the number 1 worst one to get microplastics into your bloodstream, so sorry.
What kind of popcorn?
Like, the bags of microwave popcorn,
Oh, I didn't
because
know
it
that.
sits in the plastic bag, I guess, and then
Mm.
for who knows how many months before it even gets to you, and then you throw it in a hot microwave. But it
Oh wow.
tastes so good, and it's so
I
convenient.
I hate microwave popcorn. Hate it.
Oh, well, that's good, it's a healthy option not to eat it.
There's so many other things I like though, so I'm sure that's not doing me any justice. Because if I liked it, I'd eat it. It wouldn't matter. Okay. Yeah. So another thing they did back in the Middle Ages is they did analyze urine, which I thought, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know it was that early. I mean, I knew they had been analyzing urine for quite some time, and it was pretty rudimentary on how they did it, even I think in the 40s and 50s, where you pretty much smelled it and tasted it, which is gross. I don't know who did the taste testing back then,
One,
but
2,
they
3,
would,
not it.
yeah, no doubt. I'm sure it was
So
the nurse.
the what period of time was this, Heather, that we're now to?
Pay attention, Rebecca. God.
My
Middle
internet's in
Ages.
and
I'll
out.
answer, it's the Middle Ages because I was paying attention.
Well, my internet's in and out, so I'm not hearing everything. The
Oh, okay.
Middle Ages, probably the equivalent of an intern would be my guess is who did it.
I don't know who had the pleasure of actually tasting it, but they did, yeah, they examined the urine for, like, density, sediment, smell, and sometimes they taste it for sugar in the urine, so apparently, it sounds like from what I read is they were kind of familiar with diabetes, what they called it, I don't know. You know, as Jed always jokes around, my husband calls it the shugs, so I don't know what they called it back then. But they did have a special color coded urine chart. So it was like a color wheel from white to black, which corresponded with the imbalances of the humors. So you can look it up. It does makes zero sense to me. And I did not want to get into studying what everything meant because this was about nursing. So yeah, the
So
monks, go ahead.
I was reading a book about it was like a World War II era, and one of the people in the book was diabetic. And I don't know what the test was, but basically she peed and then she put something in it, and they were like, if it turns black, that's kind of her she's on her last leg.
Hmm.
I don't know if what that means or what that is.
Oh, I don't know either. I've never heard of that.
Okay. I mean, it was the 40s, so it could be
It's very
anything.
possible. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, like I said, there's probably I could do an episode on every test they have in the medical field and how it's advanced. I mean, there's so much. I mean, that's why they call it the practice of medicine because I mean, in the 20 years I was a nurse, whew, so many things changed. Now I never thought I'd be that nurse like back in my day, we used to do this. Well, it happened. And then another time period, which 1347 to 1351, which we've all heard of, is the Black Death. It was one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. And that was the other problem during this time is they, didn't know what caused it. And that's where you got this like whole miasma, bad air, which was not the cause of it. It was bacterial. So they didn't know how it spread, but it spread like wildfire. And with very few physicians available during that time, it was mainly up to the monks, nuns, and everyday people just stepped in to care for these sick people, often with no formal training. So, even throughout time, and you'll see this progress during time too, is that people are always volunteering and always trying to help the sick, which is amazing that, that humanity aspect, even though lots of terrible things were happening in the Middle Ages, humanity was still present. And when they were going through this pandemic, people stepped up and, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit once we get to what we experienced as a pandemic and maybe the parallels or how things were different. So, anyways, meanwhile, during this same time period, across the Islamic world, medicine and nursing was much more advanced. It was significantly more advanced, actually. Scholars and physicians like Avicenna, Ibn, I think it's Ibn Sina, is how you say it, Ibn Sina. I'm not sure. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. Where they emphasize cleanliness, patient observation, and organized hospital care. In by Martis, I'm going to say this wrong, by Maristans, which is what they called the early Islamic hospitals, where they trained staff, including women, provided care in settings that resembled modern hospitals, which was much more advanced than their European counterparts at the time. So I thought that was really interesting because I've never heard that. It's funny how we always like to concentrate on Europe and what that looked like, where, other parts of the world at the time were, sounds like light years ahead of what was going on in Europe.
Were they light years ahead because they were just more hygienic in general? I mean, Europeans were so dirty during that
Oh,
time frame. I bet you the Middle East, they were a lot cleaner, would be my guess.
yeah. I mean, that's what I've kind of gathered is that, to be frank, Europeans were disgusting
Yeah,
in general,
they were.
especially England.
Yep.
they were they were
I
the
mean,
Yep.
worst.
they were taste testing urine. I mean, that's kind of weird.
Well, I guess I mean, if you're looking for sugar, that's pretty advanced to know that. It's just more that they didn't wash, but they didn't know. I mean, but they could have known. I mean, obviously, the Islamic population figured it out. I mean, they had organized hospitals. They were observing patients and making, probably documenting what they were going through and trying to figure out the best treatment, which I think, was happening also in Europe. It was more organized chaos versus, it sounds like these, in the Islamic part of the world, they were just more organized and had their, for lack of better terms, as you say, Laura, their poop in a group. So by the later Middle Ages, caregiving began to expand beyond monasteries. So during the Crusades, a series of religious wars and military orders like the Knights Hospitaller and the Teutonic Knights emerged. And these groups established field hospitals to care for injured soldiers, pilgrims, and marking one of the earliest examples of organized nursing in military settings. So that's kind of the first known documentation of nursing in, out in the field when war's going on. I'm assuming it was probably happening in other places, it just not documented somewhere. Overall, the nursing profession, although still not formalized during this time, started to grow beyond religious devotion. They were kind of separating the two at the end of this period. Their work during times of crisis, from epidemics to war, made it increasingly clear that caregiving was a vital role in society. So, some basic facts during this time about nursing is that most medieval hospitals included chapels, which I talked to you about, which had designated spaces for prayer and mass for the souls of the deceased. So there was like designated areas of, where people were dying versus, maybe the other basic area for prayer and worship. So they did try to kind of separate the two. So there was a place to mourn, I guess, for somebody that may have died. Surgery and dentistry and basic nursing care were often handled by barber surgeons who had limited formal education. So I know that kind of probably maybe touches on an episode that Laura will be doing regarding dentistry. So I'm curious on what you found regarding barbers and dentistry. So let's see, the Scola Medica Salernitina, I probably butchered that, in Italy, that was the first medical school in the Western world, also made history by opening its doors to female students. So I thought that was really progressive for medieval times for Italy to have a med school and also allow female students. Almhouses were early social welfare institutions during this time, which provided shelter for the poor, elderly, and distressed, and served as models for later charitable housing. So I've heard the term almhouses. Have either one of you?
Alms for the poor. That's all I know. I
Okay.
don't
Is
know.
that here in the US?
No, it's from
Alms is like giving. To give alms is to like give to the
Mm.
needy.
yeah. Okay, there you go. Yeah, Alms for the Poor. It's from some, I don't Dickens thing, Dickens
Oh,
book.
got it. Yeah. Maybe that's where I've just probably read it in books where like it'll be something they talk about, oh, the almshouses, blah, blah, blah. And that's the only thing that triggered for me. I don't never did any studies on them. So
The
anything
poorhouse.
I've heard about it is in reading. What was that, Rebecca?
The poorhouse. That's what I think it
The
means.
poorhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a positive thing in the books I've read, apparently, but I think that in reality, it was a positive thing. All right, so then we'll jump to the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution between 1300s and 1800s. So during this time, there was a renewed focus on science, anatomy, and observation began to transform medicine and gradually influence nursing. Yet, despite these advances, this time is often called the Dark Age of nursing. Caregiving was still seen as a low status work, usually done by poor women, prisoners, or untrained volunteers. So, not appreciated pretty much. Hospitals did grow in number during this time, but many were overcrowded, unsanitary, which is a common theme, and understaffed, which is a common theme, and still a common theme as we sit here today. So, care for these types of people in these hospitals was poor and was often limited to palliative care, meaning just keeping somebody comfortable till they died. So, the purpose of hospitals at this time, when people finally did get there, they were so sick, it was just to keep them comfortable, as many patients were just too ill to treat by the time they reached the hospital. This gave these institutions a grim reputation because, if you went there, you were likely going to die, or maybe you went there to not die and they made you worse, is kind of what I gathered. Meanwhile, hospitals for the wealthy had lower death rates, largely because they denied admission to seriously sick patients. So there you have it. However, not all was stagnant. In the 16th century, reformers like St. Vincent de Paul began improving hospital care. In 1633, he co founded the Daughters of Charity in Paris, France, a pioneering group of women who, unlike traditional nuns, lived among the people and provided hands on care to the poor and sick. So they were out in the community. Remarkably, the organization continues its work today.
Yes,
Just kind of
I'm very
skipping.
familiar with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah. He's another big name in the saints to do amazing things. So the Daughters of Charity were known as the Angels of the Battlefield for their service during various wars. So in the US, I know I'm kind of jumping in time, they served in hospitals during the Civil War, often taking administrative roles, meaning kind of directing what people do and how they do it. So I thought that was pretty cool. The Industrial Revolution, which was the mid 18th to 19th centuries brought massive social and technological change and new public health challenges. As factories multiplied and cities swelled, overcrowding, poor sanitation, and inadequate housing led to frequent outbreaks of diseases like cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis. These public health crises highlighted the urgent need for organized professional caregiving. And so I'm just kind of, you may remember this. I think we might have discussed it before, but are you guys familiar with the cholera outbreak that happened in England? Probably, I think it was the 1800 or 1880 or something. So late 19th century, when Queen Victoria was ruling as the queen. Do you guys remember that?
No, I wasn't born yet, but Rebecca, do you?
Haha. So the way this was like what's funny is during this time when they had this cholera outbreak in the late 19th century, they were still thinking miasma. I mean, that's how long this miasma BS was going on for. So Dr. Smith, I can't remember his first name, he was the one that was tracking all these cholera outbreaks. And so it was very concentrated in certain areas. And then he tracked this one woman that was of, I think, higher class. And it was atypical because she wasn't the poor person that got cholera, because it was like mainly poor people. And he had tracked
Sorry,
it
what?
back.
Can you explain what cholera is?
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's in the water. At the time, they didn't know.
It's
But
like
it's
when you get the poopsies, right?
yeah, well, you
Really
pretty
bad?
much poop yourself to
They,
death.
yeah, okay.
So, yeah, we now know that it's in water, but at the time, they didn't know how people were getting it. And so this Dr. Smith was taking care of this more well-to-do person, and he was able to track her back to where she went and visited in the area that had the outbreak, and she'd gotten water from a pump, like a community pump where everybody was getting their water. And so, it was definitely controversial when he brought it up. He was like, hey, it isn't in the air. It's coming from this water. So he's the one that discovered that in essence. And then also another interesting aspect was that people that were working in the area, these men that were like construction workers, or I think they were bricklayers, like doing brick and mortar type work. And he was wondering, like, why aren't they getting it? Like, how are they not getting it? Well, come to find out, they're drinking beer. They're not drinking out of that common pump for everybody. So they weren't getting it.
Sounds like a true Mason.
Right. So, yeah, that was interesting because he'd figured that out. Like, why the heck aren't they getting it? And then once he figured out the pump situation, he started asking these workers, like, where are you getting your water? And like, oh, we're drinking ale. We bring our own ale or whatever. And so that is why they didn't get it. So anyways, just wanted to kind of give that tidbit of information. So this miasma thing was not just in Middle Ages. It went on for a long time before they really figured out how we were getting diseases. Some additional facts during this time is that after Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable typewriting press in 1440, this enabled medical knowledge to spread rapidly through books, so people were able to start learning from each other across the world because of the ability to type stuff up real quick and pass on the information. Probably was more easily able to be read also, because not everybody's handwriting is really great. And then in 1543, Andreas Vesalius published The Fabric of the Human Body. And this was the first human anatomy book, which I thought was really cool. It challenged long-held misconceptions about the human body and laid the groundwork for modern anatomy. So I did a quick research on this, is that it was not popular when it first came out. People were like, oh, I'm surprised this person didn't get accused of being a witch, because it was so different than what they were actually practicing at the time. And then in the mid 1600s, while America was still a colony, the Quakers, a religious group, helped establish Pennsylvania Hospital, which was the first facility to care for the mentally ill, where they also had nursing like staff there helping out. I don't know how great it was. From my knowledge, I don't think a lot of the mental health facilities in those times were that great, but who knows. England's Elizabeth Poor Laws was passed in 1601, and this supported the sick and poor, indirectly shaping early public health nursing systems. So I thought that was neat. I had never heard of that before. Public health challenges of the time included smallpox, leprosy, and repeated appearances of the plague. So, more probably not in the 19th century, but 17th century. I think they still had issues with plague. Okay, so then to the Revolutionary War, which is more specific to us, which was 1775 to 1783. At the medical front lines during this time, colonial hospitals during the Revolution were makeshift and often horrifying. I'm sure you guys seen this in movies where they have, the physician, if you want to call him, just, sawing off limbs at will and only rinsing his hands to get blood off, no sanitation at all. The supplies were limited, surgical tools were primitive, and sanitation was nearly non-existent. Still, women worked long hours in dimly lit conditions, improvising treatments and herbal remedies with rags and what have you as they could. Their work was critical during the smallpox epidemic that swept through the Continental Army in the early years of the war. Inoculation was still a controversial practice at the time, was risky, but ultimately saved thousands of lives. So I think during this time, if I remember correctly, from what I read, is what they did with inoculation because it was getting so bad, where they were losing so many soldiers during the Revolutionary War that was like the first time they started requiring soldiers to get inoculated for smallpox so that they didn't die. So I'm sure you guys have heard how they used to do that, where they would just put a little bit of the pus from the smallpox from somebody else into their skin. So then,
Oh, no, I did
yeah,
not know that.
that's how they would
God, things were
inoculate
so
them.
gross back then. I'm so glad we live now. It's
Yeah, and
nasty. Here's
that's
some
how they did it
pus.
in China during the 15th century. I mean, they were inoculating back then this way with the smallpox because smallpox was an issue there too.
Yeah, I mean, it
And it was
worked.
pretty common
So
practice. What's that?
it worked most of the time. I'm sure some people
Right.
just got sick
If
from
it
it,
didn't kill
but
you,
most of the
sometimes it
time it
killed them.
worked.
So that was like the scary thing. So, but it was like get inoculated and possibly live, or get smallpox and die. I mean, that's kind of what your odds were.
Yeah.
So, anyways, when they were doing these inoculations, nurses were essential in managing the care and recovery of those who did undergo the procedure of this very primitive inoculation. So, of course, during this time at the Revolutionary War, without antibiotics or modern medical knowledge, these early nurses relied on compassion. It was not glamorous work, but it was essential. Many fell ill themselves, and some died from the very disease they fought to treat. With men at war, women stepped up to fill the critical support roles. While some followed their husbands or sons into camps out of necessity, others volunteered purely out of patriotic duty. So many were widows, struggling to survive, or women who had already lost loved ones to the war. So nursing during this time provided a meager income of about $2 per month with room and board, but it also provided them a sense of purpose during the war. So though they weren't getting paid a lot, they were like, well, what else do I got to lose? I might as well go do something, keep myself busy, is kind of what it sounded like. Beyond basic care like dressing wounds or bathing patients, these women provided emotional support. They became surrogate mothers, sisters, and confidants to soldiers far from home. Their presence reminded men of what they were fighting for. So and I don't know if either one of you have heard this about the Revolutionary War, that these women that followed the armies, in addition to being nurses, were kind of like prostitutes. And I was like, I want to look that up. I'm going to see if that's true, or is that something that should be debunked. So I did look it up. So what were these confidants, these women roles they were filling for soldiers look like? So these women were usually wives, sisters, daughters, and mothers, like I said. Although some historical perspectives indicate that the women following the armies in the 18th century often sought marriage or economic security, and that some soldiers used them for sexual satisfaction, there is little evidence that nursing was a front for prostitution. So that is what I found. Women following the army were subject to regulations and scrutiny by officers who managed their conduct. So they were treated just like the soldiers and had an expectation of following the rules. So I debunked that. It's not true, which was nice to hear. Okay, so that is a wrap for this episode. On the next episode, we'll get into the 19th, 20th, and 21st century and the progression of nursing. and get into a little bit of what my nursing career looked like and how that was. So anyhow, until next time, see you then. Bye.